The person who initiates the estrangement is not always the person who carries all the blame for ending the relationship. The person who decides not to change, not to compromise, and not to help fix the relationship also bears some responsibility as well.
Wow. Welcome back. Today we are discussing when to keep the people in our lives and when to cut them out of our lives. We're back with Cheyenne Bryant, who everyone knows as Dr. Bryant, friendship coach, and expert Sabrina Kirberg, and keeping it closer to home, i.e. our family, is our guest who you saw in that clip. That is Whitney Goodman. She is a family therapist with over 600,000 followers on social media who made it her mission to help people dealing with issues related to the people you're related to. Take a look.
Decades ago, it was pretty easy to become estranged from a family member, and we didn't even have to put all these labels on it. People didn't have to say they were no contact, low contact, estranged, because they could just move to the other side of the country, maybe only talk to that family member once a year or see them on a holiday, and that was easy to maintain. Now we have so many different outlets for people who are disruptive to our lives to contact us, right? And I think this is why we see estrangement today being something that is so clearly verbalized and dictated.
Please welcome Whitney Goodman to the conversation. I have to tell you, we started out with love, relationship, friendship. This is the hardest category, I think, because, Whitney, people assume that as family, you're just supposed to take it and you're supposed to just keep moving on, even when it's unhealthy. You've talked to a lot of folks here. What is the big revelation that you feel when you have the conversation with families in therapy?
Most people are ending their relationships with family members because of a lack of emotional maturity, is what I find. They feel like they cannot be themselves with their family can't handle their emotions, and they're really struggling to have difficult conversations with their family members.
So is it that family members, they remember you as 5-year-old little you, and they can't accept you as 35 or 40, as the adult you are?
I think that's a big part of it, especially between parents and their adult children. That's something I run into a lot, like really not wanting to release that control over the adult and having a lot of trouble with transitioning into a new
My heart is racing right now.
I'm sorry.
Because I have a phenomenal relationship with my mother. Our only occasional bump in the road, and it's very rare, is that my mother refused to believe I'm 54. She continues to believe that I am 4. And then when her child Moses, as she calls him, enters, now I'm Moses' sister, and she's both of our parents. What is the first step into, because boundaries are important. 100%. What's the first step in boundary setting with family members?
Well, first you need to figure out what is the boundary. So identifying what's important to you, what do you want to work on with this family member. Then you need to find a way to clearly explain that boundary. And the most important thing here is it's not about telling your family member what you want them to do. It's about what you're gonna do. So instead of telling them, I want you to do this, you're gonna say, when you do X, I'm gonna do this.
So do you warn them in advance?
Yeah, you can, depending on the relationship.
I love that. Just really quick to tag in. Because I always tell my clients, I say boundaries are not for other people, they're for you. And so you're supposed to set boundaries with yourself that says, when they do this, I do that. Because your behavior is what's gonna shift or change that relationship. And your behavior speaks loud about what you will or will not tolerate.
Okay,
That's
so you
good
set
stuff.
your boundaries. So you say, okay, if Thanksgiving rolls around and so-and-so asks me again when I'm gonna have a baby or whatever, I'm going to say, don't ask me that again, because I don't like it, it doesn't make me feel comfortable. And then they ask again, or they say, oh, what's wrong with you? They escalate on you. No contact. That's the most extreme version of this. When, gosh, it's a tough one, because when do you go no contact? Clearly I'm emotional with this because I have a couple of people over the years of my life who are related. I think we all have. That you say, you know, man, you know, I might have to go ghost you, but how do you handle that?
Yeah, look, I get the emotions around that because we're so conditioned to believe that family relationships should be forever, right? And that isn't always the case. It's not always possible. And so I think definitely in situations where the other person is being abusive, harmful, they're hurting you, and they will not take responsibility or accountability for their behavior, that's a moment when you have to think, what is this relationship doing to my life? Because we're so willing to sacrifice our mental health, our physical health, sometimes in the name of family. And it's like, is that sustainable for you?
And to add to what you said, that was so good. Abuse isn't just emotional and physical. Abuse is stonewalling, meaning I just will ignore and deflect, and I won't even answer the question of why do I keep asking, why haven't you had a baby yet? Abuse is I'm gonna intentionally make sure that I project my pain onto you, even if I don't know it. That's also a form of abuse. And so when someone's in a relationship and they can't have compassion or respect for your boundaries, that's called an impairment. They're causing impairment in your world, and that is a time for you to detach and say, listen, I will set a boundary with myself that says, I will no longer be around or in that environment because it's not healthy for me.
Yeah.
Wow. So I was gonna ask you, yes, Sabrina, go.
Also, the silent treatment.
The
silent treatment is also a form of abuse
stonewalling.
where you don't have a conversation with someone that you can have a conversation with to resolve something, and instead go no contact or ghost and use that as an excuse.
So, I mean, because I always like to try to find, like, listen, I work with Disney, and life is not a Disney movie. You know, it doesn't always button up at the end with us singing a fantastic Encanto song. You know, sometimes you have to take it in steps. So today, if there are people who are struggling with any of these kinds of relationship, where do you start the process tonight with yourself? With yourself, not with them, with yourself.
Yeah, I think it's about getting really honest with yourself about the toll this relationship is taking on you. What is the impact in your day-to-day life on all those areas of functioning? And then figuring out, what do I want this relationship to look like with this person? And what can I control? So if I cannot change that person, I cannot make them stop being how they're being, what can I do to help facilitate a better dynamic between the two of us?
Sabrina?
Yes, I also think that grace comes into the play a lot. Give people grace. Sometimes people don't know that they're hurting you. Sometimes you have to have a conversation with them to understand, for them to grow, to learn, because we all make mistakes.
And Cheyenne, you have said you have to ask yourself 3 things, because I want to make sure our audience gets this: how you think, how you feel, how you behave.
I call it your 3-part house: how you think, feel, and behave. How do they affect your thinking, your feelings, and your behavior? And if those three things are not in alignment, listen, manifestation happens at the point of agreement. If those 3 things are not in agreement, you're not manifesting anything good. And what's the opposite of good is bad.
Wow.
And so how are you affecting me?
How are you
And how can I align you with that?
Oof.
And lastly, after I tell you what I need, to your point, I want to ask you, can you commit to that? Because if you cannot commit to that, then I know that this is reciprocal. We both need to unplug.
Ooh, there are going to be some hard conversations tonight. Thank you to Cheyenne, Sabrina, Whitney. Go to our social media, learn where you can follow all 3 of them. Next up, they've talked about the signs of when to keep or cut a relationship. How do you have the conversation in a productive way? Author Jefferson Fisher joins the conversation. Give it up one more time for Cheyenne, Sabrina.